Time that I get to introduce him on this cruise, I'm going to go into more detail than I have on the other three. Rob was born with incredible gifts physically. His dad told me a story that his dad was a football coach for Rob's older brother, who's 3 years older, so he was coaching the 5th grade team. He snuck Rob on the team as a 2nd grader. And he was one of the X-Men. That's the guys that are so big that they can't carry the ball as a 2nd grader. And parents complained and got him off the team because he was being too physical. As the 2nd grader, right? Is that the story, right? That's how I heard it from the dad, but you know, dads can be proud and they might embellish, but that's the way I got it. But Rob is just an incredible human being. He's an incredible athlete that has a whole list of accomplishments. Oh yeah, here it is. He's so humble that he would never have actually prepared this slide for himself. Rob has made a living out of being super fast and super strong at the same time. On each Sunday, there are 32 people on the planet that can be fast enough and strong enough to play linebacker and to take the pounding that they take. He's had about 14 surgeries or more in his life just to keep himself together again so he could go back out. And he learned some life lessons. And what I love about Rob are the things that he's learned and how open he is about sharing those things with other people. He's very, very humble. He is, in fact, did you see this? When we were cutting into his class time, what was he doing? He was up here actually taking the pictures for you. This, yes. I talked him into coming to work for Younique, and I hope he doesn't mind if I say this part. His annual salary is less than his game check was each game when he played. But why does he do it? I'm going to speak for him and say it's because what helps him the most in his life is to care about others. Yes. And so I'm going to let him talk now. And if you need more time, you can take some time from my 4 o'clock. Please give it up for Rob Morris. Thank
you. Thanks, Derek. What a nice guy. He did neglect to mention that I am one of the most humble people I've ever been around myself. In addition to that. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I love working at Younique. It's made me super happy. And I'll explain why. You'll understand a lot more in about an hour. Who came to my workshop this morning? So you guys sort of got the intro. If you didn't come, it's fine. You're not, it's not like you won't understand what's happening. But we're going to get a little more into detail about what I talked about earlier. So some of this stuff, it seems kind of like an egomaniac for me to put all this stuff up there, and it'll make more sense in a minute. But some of the things that I'm most proud of are these ones, where I was awarded for having courage and desire and leadership. And again, I won this award for the NFL Courage Award. But this is only part of my story. Unfortunately, this is the story everyone knows about me. This is the person that, if you Google me, this is what you'll see. But the person that I think Derek hired is a little different from this person. So I want to talk about that person a little bit. So December 26, 2009, almost 6 years ago, I went into a place called Younique. Anybody know what Younique means? Nobody from Utah? Derek, when he had leukemia, was just down the road from this place, Younique. This is what Younique is. It is the University Neuropsychiatric Unit. And it was the day after Christmas, and I woke up, and that's what I was. Super Bowl champion. Right? Two-time All-American, Butkus Award finalist, Ed Block Courage Award winner, University of Utah Neuropsychiatric Unit in the Adult Detox Ward. And it was me and a whole bunch of other drug addicts, because that's who I was at that time. I was addicted to opiates. I was overweight. I was out of shape. I was severe depression, anxiety. I couldn't cope anymore. I only had one coping mechanism, that was drugs and alcohol. I was selfish and dishonest, antisocial. I didn't want to be around people. Hated myself. I was a bad husband and a bad father. I don't think my wife's here. Are you here, Tracy? She's here. She's the one. She's the lady in the back going like this. Yep, all those things. So this is me, just about 6 years ago. This is the me that not a lot of people knew. My wife knew, and I think a few close friends knew, but not a lot of other people. That's what I felt like for 6 years. Like, you know, I'm this big guy that has this air of confidence and has won all these awards, but I felt like I was this little kid, just scared and afraid, just kind of hiding in my own demons. So then I went on a quest, right, to overcome my issues, overcome my addiction, my depression. And I chose to do it by use of willpower. Willpower knows no obstacles. You don't find willpower, you create it. How do you think that turned out? Anyone?
Not good.
Say it louder.
Not good.
Not good. Where do you think I was 5 years later? Well, I never quite made it back to the psychiatric institute, but I was back in the treatment center that I'd been in 5 years before. Because willpower is a limited resource. So we're going to talk a lot today about an unlimited resource. Acts of self-control, i.e. willpower, draw from a common global resource. The resource is limited and vulnerable to becoming depleted over time, just as a muscle becomes tired after a period of exertion. So contrary to what I thought, and what I think a lot of us have thought at one point, willpower is not enough to get us through. Anyone who's suffered from any kind of addiction understands this. Very few will survive by themselves with willpower alone. If you've been addicted to food, to sex, to drugs, to alcohol, to processes, gambling, whatever, right? We're just not going to make it along. Matter of fact, one of the most draining things that drains willpower the quickest is your commute home from work. If you have a long commute, by the time you get home, you have no willpower. Do we have any nighttime binge eaters here? Come on, people. Raise your hands. Okay. How about any early morning binge eaters? Okay, so we have a morning early binge eater and a whole bunch of night. Why is that? Why do most of us not suffer from early morning donut sprees? Because we have willpower still at that point. By the time it hits 10, 11 o'clock at night, the willpower's gone. So this is me 5 years later, back in a treatment center again, just as miserable, just as depressed, just as anxious, and no better off. So how then do we create meaningful change in our lives? That's how you do it. Communities and habits. That's the workshop. That's what we're going to talk about today. These are my communities: Alcoholics Anonymous and Younique. And then I have my family, close friends. But where I draw most of my power for, my resources to help me survive my issues, are those two things. And quite frankly, I'm not 100% sure that I could do one without the other, because for 5 years I had dabbled in this here and there, but I still wanted to use willpower. But then I met Derek, and how I met Derek was I owned a gym, and someone referred him to me. I have a friend, you know, he's got back pain. I know you've been successful working with people with back pain. Can you work with him? Sure, I'll work with him. How much should I charge him? He's got lots of money. Great, I'll charge him more than everybody else. So that's how I met Derek. And we started working together, and we became fast friends pretty quick, I think. As a matter of fact, I'm fairly open with people, but generally not other men. And I found that I could tell Derek just about anything. So my story, I think my sort of recovery to where I am now started when I met Derek. Matter of fact, I feel so strongly about the importance of communities that I really believe this to be true on some level for each of us. We live together and we die alone. And for addicts and alcoholics and people like that, that's literally true, right? Usually, people with these kind of issues don't die surrounded by friends and family. And if you have a weight issue and you're fighting it alone, it's kind of a slow death. If you have an anxiety or depression issue and you're fighting alone, it's kind of a slow death. So I talked about this at 11. It took me about a week onto my job at Younique, after Derek convinced me to come there, that I was not in the fitness industry or the health business. My job was not to get everyone, to help everyone lose weight, but it was a mental health job. That's what he had hired me for. Okay, so let's play a game. This is real easy. I don't expect anyone should get this wrong. Name the healthy choice. The salad. Correct. You guys are good. The last group got this one wrong. All right. Fruit. Good. I didn't do this on purpose, but this is actually what me and Derek ate while we were playing cards last night. I think that exact go around right there. Okay, so everyone got it right. So what's the problem? We're smart. We know what to do, right? I know what to do. I just can't make myself do it. We all know about fitness. I would venture to say everyone in here understands that vegetables are better than donuts. I mean, I knew that not using drugs was better than using drugs. Why can't we make ourselves do it? No willpower, limited willpower. We can't last. We can last for a little bit. So how do we get the willpower? By creating intentional communities. There are groups of people who share a problem, weight loss, addiction, overeating, whatever, a mission and a common set of values. They emphasize action and practice, and this is huge. Because just 4 or 5 dudes getting together at a bar for beers is not a community, right? There's no action, there is action and practice, but it's not the kind that we're looking for. Community can start with 2 people. It can be 3, 4, 5. They can be little. They can be big. It can be you and a workout partner, right? It can be you and your family. It can be an AA group, a unique team. I happen to think that this concept of building community and habits has huge crossover into what you guys do, what you ladies do as presenters with your teams. And it's been interesting to me as I've done the first 3 workshops, how many of you have come up to me and I think even Derek too, and said, how can we implement this with our teams? Or when is corporate going to send something out to us so that we can learn how to do this? And I think it's an awesome idea, and I think it's something that Derek will certainly take a look at. So this is our community. This was my first real intentional community in fitness that I was introduced to. This is an article from Men's Health magazine, Inside the World's Top Gym. That is a 2-car garage in Murray, Utah. And Men's Health calls it the world's top gym. It's a guy named Dan John. Anyone heard of Dan John? Any fitness enthusiasts? No? Dan John, okay. Dan John, that didn't turn out quite how I expected it. Tracy, you know who Dan John is. All right, there's one. So Dan John, really in the fitness community, and particularly in the Highland Games community or the strength community, he's kind of like a fitness deity. He's one of the old school strength coaches. He's a legend. He lives 30 minutes from me. I met a friend, I met a guy in North Carolina who then told me that Dan was going to be speaking in Long Beach. And so when I went to Long Beach, he introduced me to Dan, and Dan invited me to come to his garage to start training to join his intentional community, which it was this 2-car garage. And this guy's a professional baseball player. He's a nutritionist. Dan's a strength coach. Dan has advanced degrees in history and theology, and he's a Fulbright scholar. You know, we have firemen, we have mailmen, we have accountants. It's just a group of guys that get together and work out. We share ideas. You know, we talk about our issues. We talk about what we need to do better. That was my first introduction to this concept of intentional communities. And really, it's since this date when I first learned about the power of community that I've really gotten into it and what it means and how we make it work. So why so important? Because we know when we rely solely on the effects of our own actions to inform us what to do, that it's really hard to learn. In other words, if we grew up on a deserted island, it would be tough to learn how to be a decent human being, right? Which is why, if you think about the epidemic of obesity in our country, where is sort of the epicenter of obesity? It's in the deep south, right? And it's also the epicenter of poverty. And when you have poverty, it often is difficult to have good education. And without good education, there's not great examples. And without great examples, kids are left to their own devices to try to learn on their own. Most human behavior is learned observationally through modeling. About 80 to 90% is learned from watching other human beings. But it's interesting because we learn not just from their success, but from their struggles. I mean, I sort of knew Derek's story, but I had never actually heard him say it. And I learned far more about Derek from hearing him talk about his struggles than I do about his successes. I mean, maybe not a dime a dozen, but guys that have big companies that make a lot of money, that's not an uncommon thing. But which one of those CEOs can stand up and tell you that story that Derek told you, or will tell you the next hour? So we're not just learning, but we're borrowing strength. Again, we're going back to this concept of willpower. When our willpower runs out, like this guy, we can latch on to the rest of the group. This was huge for me to discover. And it's not been that long ago that I finally figured out that I couldn't do it by myself, because I did not want to, when you're alpha male your whole life, you do not want to go to a group and ask somebody for help, right? We're all the men in here, raise your hand. How much do you hate asking for directions? We hate it. Why do we hate it? Because gosh darn it, we're men. We should know how to get there in the first place. We shouldn't have to ask anyone for directions. Now imagine you've spent up all your willpower and your life's going down the toilet, and you have to ask another group of people who, by the way, are in your same predicament, and you go to a meeting and they're full of tattoos and everyone's smoking and they're talking about how they just got out of prison and and I'm like, whoa, I have nothing in common with these people. And then you finally wake up 5 years later and realize you are just like these people. And that's power. That's the power of the group. Which is interesting because it doesn't have to be people that just got out of prison or with great stories. It just has to be someone that you can relate to. That's the power of the group. When our resources run low, so for me, when I run out of juice and I can't make it anymore, I gotta pick up the phone and call somebody, right? In our Younique fitness Facebook group that we have, it's the same idea, hopefully, and we're just starting it out. We're trying to build it, but when people start to struggle, they'll talk about it, and then someone else in the group will say, oh yeah, I struggle with that too, and this is what worked for me. And now we have this energy that doesn't require much willpower from ourselves. Okay, so how does it apply to you? How can you guys set up a community? Or how can anyone, whether you're a plumber and it's for your employees, you're a presenter and it's for your the other presenters under you, how do we set that up? Here's 9 points. I'm going to briefly talk about them. Number 1, show up. Be vulnerable, right? Derek mentioned that one of the things he likes most about me is that I'm open and I'm willing to tell my story. And that's true. I am willing to tell my story. I don't particularly love to tell my story, but I see the value in it. And guess why I tell my story? And this kind of blows Derek's theory about how much I love people. But guess why I tell it? Not for you guys. I tell it for me because it helps me. Right? And if I'm right, then I can help somebody else. So it's kind of a backwards way of me wanting to help other people, but to be selfish because it helps me. So I'm willing to show up and be vulnerable and stand up and say, this is who I am. Take it or leave it. Wasn't always like that, right, Tracy? And I'm trying to make up for lost time with my wife by doing this. Number 2, reach out to other people. So that's the next part. I showed up, I'm vulnerable, I'm reaching out to you. I'm going to offer some of the things I've learned and what I think I know to other people, try to bring them into my community. I'm going to set boundaries too. If you start a community, you have to set boundaries. Ask open-ended questions. I love this one, we'll get there in a minute. Constantly tell members the story of their impending success. Engage the behavior you want, ignore the behavior you don't. Structure and rules are important. Specific feedback, and anointing emergent leaders. So this is showing up and being vulnerable with Brene Brown. Who knows Brene? You know Brene Brown, right? Brene Brown's the best. She's the world's leading researcher on shame and guilt and vulnerability. And listen to what she has to say.
There was only one variable that separated the people who have a strong sense of love and belonging and the people who really struggle for it, and that was the people who have a strong sense of love and belonging believe they're worthy of love and belonging. That's it. They believe they're worthy. And to me, the hard part of the one thing that keeps us out of connection is our fear that we're not worthy of connection, was something that personally and professionally I felt like I needed to understand better. The other thing that they had in common was this. They fully embraced vulnerability. They believed that what made them vulnerable made them beautiful. They didn't talk about vulnerability being comfortable, nor did they really talk about it being excruciating, as I had heard earlier in the shame interviewing. They just talked about it being necessary. They talked about the willingness to say I love you first. The willingness to do something where there are no guarantees. The willingness to breathe through waiting for the doctor to call after your mammogram. The willing to invest in a relationship that may or may not work out. They thought this was fundamental.
Sorry about the sound. Did everyone catch the gist of the clip? So the people that were the most motivated, that found life to be the most fulfilling, were the people that were the most vulnerable. And being vulnerable doesn't always mean that you just have to go out and spill your life story to everybody. It just means you have to show up, right? And be willing to eventually maybe spill some of your life story at the right time. And vulnerability is never it's never comfortable. I think people think you have to go up, bare your inner soul and enjoy it. That's not vulnerability. Vulnerability is the willingness to just show up. So when you build a community, the first step is you show up. The second step is reaching out. Invite new members, right? I'm still learning the model of Younique, but I'm assuming that you're going out, you're finding new presenters, you're talking to them, you're asking them questions. What do you like about Younique? What does it mean to you? What would be anything to get them talking. We're just trying to get people to open up at this point. We're not into habits, we're not into motivation, we're just building a group. Invite people to help out in the community, give them tasks and responsibilities. My job at the Sunday morning coffee and a big book meeting is I show up an hour early and I make the coffee. That's my job. And now I feel like I need to be there, that I'm responsible for part of that group. And have a welcoming committee or routine for new members. A routine is anything that you do more than once, right? Number 3 is setting boundaries. I love this one because if vulnerability is emotional exposure to being our true selves, boundaries are what protects us. Right? So the boundaries are what I keep, what's mine, and what I want to give to you, I give to you. We don't take on too many commitments. This is a problem. Prioritize. This is a problem. I know this. I get to talk to the people that you talk to. So I understand some of the struggles that presenters have, particularly at the higher levels of prioritizing what is most important in their life. Sometimes we are willing to give to other people what should be reserved for ourselves. Right? That's priority. Be kind, but be firm. This one's hard for me. It's hard for Derek, too. Don't tell him that, but he's here, so he heard it. But I know because I'm around him all the time, and I know how hard it is because he cares about people so much. You know, and if there's some issues going on, I know it's difficult for him to try to figure out, how firm do I be? I love these people, you know, but I need to talk to them. There was a guy named General James Mathis in Iraq. He was a commander, 2003. Who's that now? You know? He's a Marine. Okay, there you go. And General James Mathis, he took his, what would the group be called? Platoon, what would it be?
What's that?
What would his group be called? A platoon?
It would be like battalion.
He took his battalion, that's right. He took his battalion into this city in Iraq. And when he got there, he did something that was a little bit risky, but it was the right thing to do. He sent all the artillery back, all the weapons back. And then he went in, no armor, no helmet, no guns, and he went in and he started to meet with all the tribal leaders. Right? Really unusual move. But he knew that he had to win their trust because he needed help. He needed them to help him figure out who was friend and who was foe. Right? So he gets in there, no backup, no tanks, no artillery, just him, his crew, and these tribal leaders. And this is what he told them. He said, I want your help. I didn't bring artillery, but I'm pleading with you with tears in my eyes. If you mess with me, I'll kill you all. That, my friends, is being kind but firm. I don't know that you need to go to that extreme in your groups. Unless, as I said Sunday, if you have Taliban in your downline, then this may be necessary. But otherwise, but I love this story, right? Because he was willing to be vulnerable. He was willing to go the extra, to go out there, take a huge risk to earn the trust of these people. My guess is it wasn't comfortable for him to walk in there with no tanks and no artillery. But I love the firmness. I love that quote. Number 4, ask open-ended questions, then listen. Open-ended questions never have yes or no. Open-ended questions are designed just to get people talking. It can be about anything. What's on your mind? How are you with that? How confident are you with that plan? What's the first thing you want to do to reach the goal? So often, especially with my kids, I ask them yes or no question, and what do they tell me?
I don't know.
Yes or no? No matter what? Yes. No. No. Yes. It doesn't matter what the question is. They will, my 6-year-old will flat out look me in the eye and lie. Yes. Yes. But if we want to create dialogue within our communities, it has to be open-ended questions. This is actually a skill. If you're a person like me, that you end up in a lot of conversations that get really uncomfortable really quick, then you know you're not good at asking open-ended questions. If you talk to someone for a minute and then you run out of things to say, one of the two of you doesn't know how to ask open-ended questions. Number 5, constantly telling the members the story of their impending success. So you, as a leader at Younique, when you have these new recruits coming up, these new percenters, and they have their kits, and you're indoctrinating them into your way of doing things, you have to constantly tell them the story of their impending success. Why? Because they cannot see it. You hear it over and over again. It's Sherry Brown, right? That I met yesterday. She's great. There you are. Did you see it in the beginning? Your success?
Oh no.
What did you see? You saw nails, right? You saw a Manny Petty. She saw a Manny Petty and a husband that wasn't mad at her. Right? Am I wrong?
No, that's it.
And so we have to constantly tell them the story of their success. You guys are killing it this month. You're sharing tips, tricks, sales ideas, approaches, and supporting each other. This is how you will achieve black status, just like I did. That's how I did it. That's how you will do it. And for the new presenter, it's not going to be black status, right? Because that is not a realistic goal for them. It's going to be green status to become qualified. And so you can do this on social media. The thing I love about Younique is it's all social media driven. When you're using social media, respond to every comment using this storytelling formula. Somebody says, you know, I'm really struggling with my sales this month. You know, but one thing that I tried that really worked was I started asking open-ended questions like we talked about. And you say, great job, Sherry. Asking open-ended questions like that is how you're going to get to the next level in your success. Good work. So we're constantly telling. We're not lying to them. Like, I think the great lie we tell, and I think it's mostly in the West, is this one. You can do anything you want if you put your mind to it. I'm sorry, I just think it's a lie. It's not true. Because I cannot play in the NBA. There are numerous reasons why I cannot play in the NBA, right? But if we tell people you can do anything you want if you put your mind to it, and you have the ability and the work ethic, right, and the commitment, that's a whole different story when we add all the ands on there. Engage the behavior you want, ignore the behavior you don't. If you have kids, you'll understand this concept. If you don't, you will someday. Right? This, I don't know how much of a problem this will be, but I imagine that there is some drama occasionally within the groups, right? And the tendency is to want to fix every little issue and fix every little problem. And sometimes discretion is the better part of valor. Sometimes we just let things go and let the group figure it out. Let the group weed it out. Now there is an exception. If they're putting others at risk of threatening the vibe or the purpose of the group, then you have to nip in the bud. That's what a private message, just to say, okay, this behavior is not acceptable in our group. We love you, we want you to be in our group, but this is how we're going to change it. And now we need structure and rules. I love this concept of a welcoming committee. If you're the leader and you have a Facebook group, you don't want to be the one constantly welcoming everybody, right? So what better way to get some of your mid-level members of the group engaged than have them welcome the new people? Have them welcome them to the group. Icebreakers. Again, you notice we're not doing any major habit building yet. We're just getting people into the group. When was the last time you ate an insect? What is your favorite Jello mold and why? Would you rather have chicken pox or eat a chicken with chicken pox? It's just conversation starters. It's just something to get people talking. I think we get so nervous that we have to get people in the group, indoctrinate them in our sales approach, and go, work, go to work. But there's one problem. They don't know anyone in the group, they don't feel comfortable in the group, they're not sure what the heck they're doing, why they're there. We just want to get them assimilated. Rituals are little things the group does. This welcoming community, these icebreakers, those are rituals. I'm on several Facebook fitness groups, and they have these rituals every time. Every new member has to answer these certain 2 questions. Right? And you have to have rules. These are our rules at Younique Fitness on our closing.